Good morning. It's Friday.
It's Friday.
Welcome to the Friday Grief Chat with Jill and Deb. And we have a special guest today named Megan. And we have been blasting it. We're so excited to have her. Deb, do you want to do the introduction? Because you guys are friends.
We are. So I can do informal and formal. So I'll do both. I met Megan, 3 years ago, 4 years ago during COVID. We were in a class together. And wow, as I got to know Megan, one, I love her sense of humor. That's important to me. Two, she is great to talk to. She has had I like to say, at her tender age of like more than half mine, she is very worldly and knows a lot. And also, I love the way she talked about how she had to leave the church when she was divorced, actually, probably before she was divorced. And she has 2 twin kids, 6 years old, and how the church impacted her. And it was probably one of the first times I was really hearing the word deconstruction. And Megan and Daniel Guerra have been on our show before, but I thought I would take them separately this time because deconstruction means basically tearing down, tearing apart, and then there's reconstruction. And dang, don't we do that with grief? It doesn't matter what the loss, your life got deconstructed.
Yeah. Yep. And you got to put it back together.
Absolutely. And
but with boundaries.
With boundaries, with self-care, with your new knowledge. Because once you have new knowledge, you don't shove that genie back in the bottle.
No, it's really hard to walk it back.
Yeah, there's no way to shove that knowledge in. Yeah. You have to just be and integrate. So, do you have any questions, Jill, that you want to ask, or I'll just start like going.
I want Megan to tell us about where she started and where she got to and what helped her get there, especially with 6-year-olds, 2 of them. I have 1 6-year-old grandson, and boy, is he a lot. Of course, he's got a brother and a sister, but boy, is he a lot. Yeah. And when mine were 6, oh my goodness. So 2 at a time. Oof.
Yeah, I don't know anything different. That's what I tell people is like, you don't know what you don't know. And I got thrown in the deep end with having 2. So it is like a whole experiment of recognizing there's only one of me and 2 of them as single parent, and they likely won't get what they need all from me. And like, there's even grief in that and recognizing that and just like sitting in that okayness. But I think the biggest thing for me when I got my divorce, that was almost 4 years ago now. And that's like, I was in deconstruction a long time before that. So I came from a place of being in like on track to becoming a pastor and a specific denomination that was very, I thought at the time, like open and affirming, welcoming, love-centered. And I just recognized as our culture got more polarized, the church became more polarized. And I started to have to confront a lot of things of like, what is it that I actually believe? And where do I want like my behaviors to like meet my beliefs? And so I started like unpacking all of the belief system for probably 6 years before I really exited the church. And there was a lot of like just walking it back within that and like stopping being in leadership, recognizing that I probably don't want to be a pastor, and going to business school and going further into that of just like, I'm not going to be a leader at all in a church, and I'm just going to sit in community. And really what happened was, when I got my divorce, it was just like the ugliness of that community just was exposed, of like all the different emotional immaturity and not being able to handle really hard, tricky things, because my divorce was very messy and it was very sudden in COVID, and it had a lot of ramifications that people just didn't want to see. Like they didn't want to believe that it could be happening to 2 people who were seemingly like lovely, beautiful, welcoming people. Like that's the thing with the church is like there's so much like that you don't see behind the curtain when you're in that community, just because
and how many opinions there are.
Exactly. And there's just not that the skill of vulnerability lacks in the church of like how to do that in a healthy way with boundaries and how to not be enmeshed. And so what happened was there's just a lot of triangulation and a lot of manipulation. And it was just very clear from the outside looking in now from 4 years that there's no way that I was going to be able to stay and like make it work with these people just because of how polarizing even like me getting a divorce was. Like I didn't realize that because there's so many divorced people in the church, but like I was only married for like under 3 years. Like it was just approaching 3 years, and it was like very much like I am not okay, this marriage is not okay, I'm like leaving, I'm out. And it was like very black and white, and there was no convincing me to have reconciliation. There was no convincing me to like sit in the tension of forgiveness. And so there was just a lot of grief with that. Like overnight, I had people that I thought were like on my side do like horrible things that were just like huge betrayals. Like going through my things to try to find evidence that the divorce was something beyond me just being unhappy in my marriage and me not getting my needs met. Like they had to have a label outside of that to like label me for the community. And I'm lucky that it was because I wasn't a leader. It was kind of a quiet thing where I just kind of disappeared. And what I recognized at that point was nobody reached out to me and asked where I was. And that produced a lot of grief and a lot of questioning of, okay, what is it even, is this community? If I am gone for over 3 months and nobody asks like how I am, what's happening, does that mean about that community? And so sitting in that tension of like the relationships I thought I had were just not as deep as what was being said. And so I learned like the very real lesson in just relationships in general, that behavior matters so much more than the words coming out of people's mouths. Like that was a huge lesson for me, and recognizing like, as you said, Jill, like the necessary boundaries that come with leaving communities and like being in health and grief. And I like was hit doubly because I lost my marriage and I lost my community all at the same time. And like I wasn't like, I had lost like the community I grew up in like many years before that. So I was already in grief because the church I was like pastoring and on the staff of had closed. And so I dealt with grief in like that level. Then 3 years later, I dealt with the grief of just recognizing what I'm going through. Like it's very hard for me to be able to sit in community. And I've tried multiple times since then to be in community with people. And for some reason, every church I went to ended up closing. Don't know why, but it was just like this funny thing. And so my friend Lisa,
because we're really rebuilding right now.
Yeah. Well, my friend Lisa kind of jokes.
Welcome.
Like, you're kind of like the whisper of death for communities, where you're like you come in and you like reflect all of these things, because she was like, you've sat in deconstruction for so long that you just like require people to deconstruct if they're around you. Like you just mirror what that looks like.
So Megan,
that was
yes to all of it. And I'm just like, as Jill writes out, and I'm glad, Jill, thank you for writing everything out to our listening audience, like deconstructing what we're listening to, and how many griefs within one grief.
Yeah.
It's no friends, no support. Do you even matter?
Single parenting.
Yeah, going into single parenting alone in COVID. So it was wild. And I was lucky that I had a couple of friends that like had popped up. And the one thing, like, I would say I have never lost my faith in this process. Like a lot of people who go through deconstruction, they tend to like have a crisis of faith.
Yeah, they really do.
Had the gentleness of not really ever feeling disconnected from like the bigness of the divine. And I felt like the divine always placed a person to like walk with me through that next step. And so even though I was alone, there was a person who was like sitting in my pain with me. and like with a lot of kindness and teaching me new tools that I needed to go through that next step of like dying to myself. Like it really felt like as I was losing all of these things, like there was parts of my ego dying, there was parts of my real life dying, and I just had to sit and watch and feel it all. And I didn't know how to process that. And it was really heavy for a long time. And I would say one of the moments that shifted for me is actually when I met Deb and she taught me about humor. Like that was a huge moment for me of recognizing that there's a different way I could be going about this. And she reflected I really was going through like a dark night of the soul for many, many, many years. And like she was able to like keep reflecting that, but also like bring in more lightness and humor and remind me that I am a joyful person, that I bring that into spaces, that I do have like a lot of love within me. And that is a huge part of why I exist, right? And so like having those people, even though it wasn't in like a formal community, really helped me be able to walk forward. And just utter curiosity of knowing I actually don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who I am right now. I don't know what I believe right now, but I do know that I have responsibilities. I have two little humans that I have to care for and like teach
you have
them
to feed them like 3 times a day and make sure their clothes are clean and they wash their hair. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And so I recognized it became like just a day in, day out, like recovery mode of like every morning I would wake up and I was like, today is going to be a hard day because it already feels hard, but I know I can like moment by moment, like get through it and be gentle with myself in my grief and be gentle with myself in the not knowing. And I find that in our humanness, we hate not knowing, but that's literally the whole part of deconstruction that I've learned over 10 years is it's getting okay with it not knowing, because the deconstruction and the reconstruction happen over and over and over again. And I think that's so similar with grief, where like the grief stops and it starts and it stops and it starts. Like I was just reflecting like a couple of weeks ago that I was still hanging on to grief of my divorce, of the lost community. And it's been many, many years and I have moved forward in my life, but I still have like those waves of like really wishing it was different, really wishing that those spaces worked for who I was as a person and who I was becoming. And like having to just really honor those feelings and recognize like this is something that I can walk with, but still move forward. Like it doesn't have to like make me stay put. And I think
does
like
it feel like you have unfinished stuff left in that grief? Like there's things you need to finish up, not with those people, but about those experiences?
Oh, absolutely. Because it took me a long time to even recognize like the depth of what happened in some of those interactions, because it was so shocking. Mm-hmm. Like there was so many boundary crossings that were so deep and so painful that it was so hard to even like hold all at the same time, because I'm still in the disbelief of how can people act like this?
Yes.
And really say that they like love and that they're like believing in love. And I think like just as a collective, we're kind of in that shock right now of seeing like collectively what's happening, because collectively we're also going through a deconstruction. And so you see that shock and awe and the grief come out and the polarization, and like that's what we want to do in deconstruction, is find a reason and like really be like, this is it. And I find like that is like the most dangerous thing in deconstruction, is making up your mind and saying I'm never gonna let go of that. Like I literally just opened up both hands and be like, I don't know anything, I'm letting it all go, and whatever stays put and settles is good with me, and everything else I'll walk away from.
You know, it's really like walking into almost like a different reality.
Yeah.
Like you have been told this reality for so long, and then all of a sudden you see past that reality. It's like being told there is no Santa Claus.
Oh, totally.
Like it really hits so deep. Just out of curiosity, and also for a very good reason, do you have any friends from 6-10 years ago?
I do. So my friend Lisa, she was a pastor at a different church, and she actually walked through me through with me my entire divorce. She was the one who took me to the bank to take out all like half the money, because she was like, you have to do this. Like, this is a boundary that has to be done. And like really helped me like in my own grief and codependency and not being able to stand up for myself, like really stand up for me and be like,
you needed a business manager, and every griever needs that.
Yes. And she really was that for me for like that first year. Like, she would check in, she would make sure I had people checking in on me. And she has become my closest friend because of that. And she has never judged my process of like leaving behind what she still believed, because she now has gone through a deconstruction process. But at the time, she was like evangelical pastor, really committed, seeing me being like, F the church, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with any of this. And she really just was my witness in that and was like, I love you as a person. I'm here for you. And she also told me to do things like, you're never going to talk to those people again, block them. Like, the level of what they did is at that level of they should not be in your life.
What a loving thing to do to reinforce that for you.
For me, of when I couldn't have boundaries, she was the one just told me how to have them. Like, she gave me some skills and emotional maturity that I just didn't have at the time, and has helped me grow up in the last 6 years in ways that I'm super thankful for. And she's really one of my only relationships that like made it through. I also have a dear friend, Courtney, who was at a leadership school with me in the same denomination, also recently deconstructed out. But like, those two relationships are really the only ones that have survived all of this, and everything else is like completely new. And that, just even thinking about that, I'm like, wow, like that is a lot of loss that I actually haven't fully held, that like all the people in my life 10 years ago are really not there anymore on any level.
Wow.
And that happens a lot in grief and loss, regardless of the loss, is folks who don't get who you are becoming, don't want to hear the level of what others have done or the experiences you've had that have changed you to such a depth that you can't be who you used to be. Because before the loss, you were this person, and loss irrevocably, irreparably changes us. And then it's us to decide who we're going to go into being.
Absolutely. And I think that was the lesson I learned in the deconstruction, was like the grief was the vehicle of the change for me. And I didn't realize that when you're in the midst of it, you're just kind of like, this is horrible. And why do I have to go through this? Like,
and where are my people?
Exactly. And why do I feel so alone in this?
Yes.
And being also really thankful for when like the people that you least expect show up and like lend a hand, and or like, I will be your person. Like Deb did that for me. I had my friend Sarah do that for me. And like, these are people that I would have never expected to be in my life, because they only had people from my faith in my life. Like, that's the one thing that's very specific to evangelical Christianity, is you're really taught to separate out and to like really go all in on the community. And so when that stops working, you like, it just becomes, your life becomes a vacuum, and you don't know what is gonna like take place in that vacuum.
You know, it's
there's no space for anyone else.
Exactly.
And you're told not to have anyone in your life that doesn't believe like you, because
or if you want those people, you have an agenda. That's the thing, is like, I could never be with people that didn't have the same beliefs without having the agenda of changing their minds.
Yes.
Just every really fundamentalist religion. It doesn't matter which one.
No, that's the thing, is like, that's what I recognize, like learning about religion and learning about like what that space does in your spiritual journey, like the benefits of it, but also like the things that are really important to deconstruct to hold a bigger expression of faith. A lot of it is recognizing the boundaries at play really just create insular, enmeshed relationships that like don't allow mature growth. And I really was stagnating anyways, and becoming super narcissistic, super defensive, and like and I became like very blind to myself in a way of like, I thought I had it all together until I got my divorce. Like that like was like the implosion of my life of like, oh, I'm really not okay. And I've kept it in for so long. And this is like the grand like finale of that not working, and recognize, oh, I have a lot of work to learn how to be not okay, and like actually communicate that in a way that's healthy with safe people, and like be curious enough to explore it and not have shame about it. Because so much of the time in fundamental religion, you just are like shamed all the parts that are uncomfortable and like shove them back in instead of really learning to explore those parts. And that's a huge part of grief, is exploration of those parts.
I just want to reflect back to our listening audience and thank everybody for listening. And hi, Steve, that seeing Megan right here, right now, and listening to her talk is not at all when I first met her. She had no facial expression. She that was the thing that drew me to Megan. I'm like,
you needed to make her smile.
I felt here in my world belief, right? In my cult of humor, I'm like, my agenda is what's her agenda and why can't she smile? So it's based on questions. And then I take it as a personal thing. How am I going to make her smile? Which I'm not going to go into here, Jill, I'll tell you off camera, but it's really, it
still makes me laugh. Like what you did, you like learned me so fast and was like, I did. I
did.
She's a little scary that way. I'm just saying.
I know. I am. And Steve, I'll write you and tell you. I mean, I just don't want to say everything online. But anyway, Steve is saying Megan's a testament to strength and moving forward with her life. And she has a lovely smile and makes Steve smile. But I will tell you, when I saw her, we were in a group and people were talking, and here's Megan.
Oh my.
Yeah. But that was also like 3 months after I left my husband. So she like met me
numb.
Like, right.
Oh, I thought you were divorced by then.
No, you had met me like literally like at the very beginning. Maybe I was like closer to 6 months, but I was like in the separation process. And
yeah.
You were in the shock and awe.
Yes,
she really was
total numb state.
Yeah. And you know, I couldn't relate to Megan as far as deconstruction. I mean, I went through sort of like that with Judaism. And I said, screw it. I'm going to figure out every other religion. I'll deal with Judaism last. But the fact that she was a single mother with 2 kids, I had been a single mother just with 1. I mean, I co-parented to some degree. And, you know, my heart went out to her. And it just was, oh my goodness, you know. And so actually then Megan and myself, another person, we were part of getting grandfathered into coaching, right? And that's where I got certified in coaching.
Yeah. And really she used some of her coaching hours to grief coach me through some deconstruction stuff, some divorce stuff, because that was even like
divorce is of pure grief all by itself.
Totally. And like I've been divorced for 4 years now, and I feel like now I'm actually moving forward. Like I was like in this like tornado for 4 years of reaction and having to pivot and adapt and like learn my life over and over again.
Figure out who to trust. Figure out where to place things. Yes.
And it was super messy and uncomfortable. And I didn't really fully know who I was in it or how I should respond. And like, so it really took a long time. And I still have grief. Like I still have moments of recognizing, man, I really wish things could have ended differently between me and my co-parent now. Like I really wish we could have come together, but like our pain was like pulling us apart. And for me, it's like I had to just like put on my oxygen mask and survive and recognize it's his responsibility to take care of the rest. And that's his life and his journey. And our life together wasn't working on any level. So that was a big thing for me. Go for it, Deb.
And so I also, and I always try to look at how do you how do you support your children and their grief while you're grieving as a parent? So I'm sure to ask you.
I don't know if I've done a good job of that. I think it's just a lot of validation and mirroring of like, this is how you feel. I also am super thankful that I have a really great like familial support system. So my parents were able to really step in and be safe
really
people
helps.
for my kids while I was grieving. They have been able to like love them in ways that I wasn't able to love them fully. And they also had really great caregivers. Like I was really fortunate that financially at that time, I was able to like have help financially to like have somebody with them when I was working. And that person, she just had like so much love for them because she was with them even like when they were little. And so they just had that secure attachment and connection. And so that safety really helped them transition quite well. And because they were so young, part of them just didn't get it. Like they were kind of like, okay, I guess we're living here now with mom. And
and that's like, what kids do. Adapted. They really do adapt.
Yeah.
Right?
I find now they have more grief. And I'm thankful now that I have more spaciousness in it. We're able to like have more conversations around, okay, why did that happen? What does that mean for their life? How do they respond to that grief? And I really just help them stay curious to themselves in that process, because they will likely have grief for the rest of their childhood, because that was a huge thing for them to lose a huge parent. And there was many
every major life event
be around. And so like that was a major life event, like over and over for them again. And so they have a lot of things that they get to like learn from and work through now, which I as a parent grieve that I wasn't able to protect them more from that. But I also recognize that's kind of like part of the human condition. And so I hold that tension of like, we all have things to grieve. There's just come in the form of having parents that live separately now, and that their lives are a little bit more split. And I think what's also hard is their dad is still in the church and I am not. And so they also have that dual like belief system of like, what do I believe? And so that also produces grief for them of like, and a little confusion of like, how do they navigate? And so I just really empower them. And I say, it is whatever you think I will go with. I am not here to tell you what to believe. Whatever feels safe for you is good for you right now. And I'm for that. And so I really just always like have that language. I'm very non-anxious with them about like how they are becoming people, because I know there's so much that they are sorting through. So I just try to hold like the biggest container I can for them and all their big feelings and just label it over and over again. And sometimes I'm really bad at it because it triggers my big feelings. And then we're all having feelings together. But I find in that, then we go backward. Then after it's done, we just go back and like explore. It's like, yeah, that was really uncomfortable and it didn't really work for any of us, but we're able to like have that conversation and pretend it didn't. Like we're not pretending things aren't happening in my family.
And what a wonderful skill set that is for them going into adulthood, even at 6.
Absolutely. I find that they amaze me as people because they have such a deep wisdom already of the world, and they are 6. Like, but the things they say, I'm often like, you understand so much more than what people give you credit for. So much.
And when we teach kids to grieve in a positive way and to talk through the experiences and to share the discomfort and to not be shamed for it, but instead to be welcomed into it and to be given support to figure it out, they are so much better at loss as adults. It changes their work. It changes their outlook. They'll be coaching their friends.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. They will. As teenagers, they will have friends who have someone dies or a friend dumps them or there's a divorce, and they will be the ones to step into that.
Yeah, I am thankful that you're reflecting that, because there's so like I do hold like anxiety as a parent going through a lot of grief of how is this going to impact their adulthood, because on some level like I can control it, but I can't control it because parents can only do as much as like as best as they can, and like
we let them fly,
and then you let them like figure out the rest. And that's something for me, I have then more compassion for my parents. And like just understanding like the complexity of parenthood in that regard, and like the grief that comes with parenthood, because there is a grief of like not having control. And so like that is something that like I've had to work through, and
it's
that
a really big vessel.
Yeah, I've not been able to like protect them from everything that I've wanted them to protect them from. And that's something I really have to surrender to and recognize. This makes me really uncomfortable. This is something that I really was hoping their life would be different in this way. And we just all have to sit together and probably for like most of their childhood and like circle back to like, yes, this is an unfortunate thing that is different. Well, like unfortunately, divorce is pretty like well established things in kids' lives. So luckily they have a lot of friends at their school that have single parent homes. And so for them, like they're not
an aberration. They're part of the bunch.
Exactly. Like they think that there's some normalcy to it. And I have gratitude for that, as much as like that also grieves me that as people we can't figure out how to live together, but just as life. So
right.
Yeah.
You know, reflecting how my daughter's 41, and I remember when she went off to college and she'd say to me, wow, Mom, and reflecting on other divorced kids and the things that they talk about, she didn't have to, because she had worked through that and she could help them. And even now, I see that kind of openness and thoughtfulness that she gives others when they say something. And, to see that lesson that you worked on so hard for yourself get now reflected in with others, I don't think there's any better feeling seeing your children or your grandchildren reflect a part of you that you hold dearly. That's just wow, and
absolutely.
And it could be a niece or a nephew that you hung out with, like my nieces and nephew, when they say, oh, Auntie Debbie did blah, blah, I can do blah, blah, to carry that wholeness into another generation. Wow. Just wow. And that's
my kids reflect that. My kids lived through my being widowed twice and married 3 times, and they are now all in their 20s and 30s. I can't believe I'm saying that. And I get calls from them or texts or emails, depending on where they are. I've got this friend and I'm going to give them these resources. Do you have anything else you could send? Because they just lost, either parents got divorced or somebody just died or somebody is sick, because they've been part of that.
Yeah.
And because they've learned to talk about it in a healthy way, not to shy from it. They grew up learning that after someone has died in front of you, then you gather up the kids and take them out for ice cream. So nobody's there for the removal. And then we hang out and have a meal afterward, right? That's just part of life. And that as well for your kids, that divorce is normal. And, it's unfortunate that we can't live together, but sometimes we have to recognize things aren't healthy and we need to make that change.
Absolutely.
And that's healthier.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about that, of like, what's safe, what's not safe. Like for them also learning to stand up for their needs, because sometimes they want me to do things and advocate for them in ways that the system won't allow me to. And so like, it's really unfortunate, but it's also like this opportunity for them to learn at a young age how to feel empowered, that like they have needs and they can speak up for their needs, even if they don't do it perfectly. And so like they do that really well at school, and like they just are really cool people, because I really do believe it's what they've also been through. Like they are so compassionate and kind and open-minded. I think having parents that have 2 very different belief systems have showed them that they can love across boundaries and across belief systems, and it doesn't change who they are.
Right.
I want to add one more thing about religious and spiritual beliefs. And the way Kate grew up, of course, Jewish and Unity, and her dad, nothing at that time, but we also did some Methodist, right? And I would do periodically, growing up with Kate, I'd say, you know, do you believe in God? What does God mean to you? And at some point she goes, I don't really believe in God. However, the cool thing is, if someone started talking along those kind of spiritual or religious, lines, she'd say, I'm not good. So knowing what she's capable, I'm not really good at those kind of conversations, but my mom is. Here's her number. And so she would, that's cool. Another thing, to be open to other people's point of view, being able to be okay with yours.
Absolutely.
And say, I recognize you have a need to talk or someone to listen.
Let me be that person, or let me find you that person.
Yes, let me recommend.
Let's not shut it down.
Totally. And for me, in my deconstruction process, I actually have way more tolerance for people that are identifying as fundamental Christians than I did when I was a fundamental Christian. Like, I was so clinging to what I needed to be right about that I lost the importance of just being in relationship with people and seeing the person in front of me. And so now that I don't have to be right about anything at all and feel really free in that, I can just see the person in front of me and reflect to them what's important to them and have them feel seen in that. And that to me is a huge value of who I am as a person. So that's something that I'm really thankful for, that I gained, that I did not have when I was saved.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Megan, for
thank you.
Yeah. Today. Wow, these comments and everything, that's just amazing. I mean, I gotta really put this out there, and we are on a podcast on Spotify. This will get uploaded to that sometime in the future,
next little bit.
Yeah,
but it's also held always on Humor, Grace, and Grief on Facebook.
Yes,
so you can always find it. And that's the facebook.com/Friday Grief Chat. You'll always find it live on there at any time.
Megan, will you come back sometime, talk about divorce?
Absolutely, for sure.
Divorce,
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good weekend. I hope that you are enjoying where you are, and that we can take from this all the great lessons. I've got lots of comments in the chat.
Yeah. Great job, Jill. Wow. I can't do that.
I'm kind of all over it today. And then Fred had to join us, of course, because he heard Megan's voice and wanted to be part of it.
Oh,
I love that.
Yeah.
I will be next week. We'll talk about our topic in a couple days. Jill and I usually do. And I will be at the ocean on Jill's timeline.
You're going to be Pacific Coast.
I am. I'm going to be in Oregon. So I will gladly wave hi to everybody from on the East Coast and West Coast. And everybody just do the best you can, because that is good enough.
Absolutely good enough.
Yeah.
You are. As Stephen says, Megan, keep up the great work. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Remember to sparkle.
We will.
Stephen, you too. All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.